let me start
Yeah.
with where a point that I'm fairly got strong views on. When we talk about sovereign capabilities, we want Australia to build a world-leading cyber workforce.
Mhm.
Are we prepared to invest in the development of our staff
Great question.
internally in
Yeah.
that area? Or do we think we'll just poach them from overseas and we'll offer people citizenship to come? Because I think part of the problem is that we aren't taking seriously the development of our internal people and making them become our cyber experts, not thinking some outside resource we can outsource it to somebody else maybe.
Yeah, well, there's sort of two parts. And I think one of the things that astounded me going through the Cyber Summit the other day was that a classic piece is missing. Let's go back a few steps. And I think we need to, and this is something we need to do. We have to start at school. We tell kids to brush their teeth, to wear a seatbelt when they're in a vehicle. What about password managers, multi-factor authentication updates when available? That should be drilled in like a slip, slop, slap campaign into kids and into schools. We've got to start there. We keep trying to unlearn bad habits in the workplace. Too late by then. You're too far down the track. It's like trying to treat cancer once they've got it rather than do some preventative measures down here, right? So we've got to go back there. But we've got to make a clear pathway for the job too.
Sorry, Jason, but I think that's a very interesting point because I remember as a child growing up, they taught me how to cross the road, look left, look right, look left again, and across the road. And it was instilled in me as a young kid. In a digital world of the 21st century, that's some of the security practices that we need our children to embrace.
Yeah, because the thing is, I remember I've got two girls, they're older now, but when they were younger, it was so intuitive to use an Apple iPhone. They could go on there and was my phone secure at that time? Not as it is now, but they could easily have drifted off onto any sort of site. I did actually have a chat with someone the other day. They said their kid was looking at videos of midgets, and then she said when she scrolled and saw what else midgets would have led to on YouTube or whatever channel they were looking onto, it could go into a whole dark world of stuff. So
I can imagine.
Yeah, so it's really got to be, you got to put the guardrails in early, and you got to actually get this instilled in, with MFA and all those sorts of things. So the parents aren't educated, the teachers aren't educated, so therefore the kids don't. So we've got to start in the schooling system, and also create a clear pathway if we want to fix this jobs problem of how do I become a cyber professional. So one of the pieces of work when I was at Offcyber we were doing was to do a professionalization scheme. We talked about, and I think analogies are good for this sort of thing because people will really relate to it. If you go and build your house, you look for a registered builder, don't you? So you've got a registered builder, they've got all the qualifications in place. You can say you're a cyber professional and what you wear with all, how do you know that you're actually getting a cyber professional? And in a lot of these cyber incidents, we're getting the people who were there to cause the problem in the first place going back and fixing it. It's like getting a dodgy builder to go back in. And quite often these people, when they're doing incident response, are sort of patching up and covering up what they did wrong as well as trying to repair the situation.
Yeah, but Jason, I come in like the cybersecurity as a discipline, it's less than probably 10 years old in this sort of area. So there's no experts with years and years, decades of knowledge and experience. We're all novices. We're all novices in some degree. So we should be encouraging people in our workforce. What I'm scared of, we make it like a university course or something like that, where it's a discipline that constantly, it's almost iterative because the criminals are being more and more creative, and we need to be on top of it.
Yeah, well, when I was at RSA this year over in the US, there's 55,000 cyber professionals converge on San Fran. One of the main things that was spoken about there is how quickly the criminals have got onto, or the cyber criminals have got onto the generative AI for fixing up phishing emails and doing the like, but it's not being used as creatively on the other side to try and protect us, So it's very slow moving on that side. To go back to your point, Pete, about the discipline, I think also you think about carpentry as we were using before as a discipline. When you're doing that as an apprenticeship, you're doing on the tool. So you'll go and build, and then you'll do a couple of days at school. So you're sort of, and as you say, cyber's moving so quickly. To build a house frame doesn't change that greatly. So once you learn those skills in that environment, but what we're doing is we're putting people in university for 3.5, 4 years without much hands-on skill and then throwing them into the job market. And the thing is, as you say, this is a very fast-moving feast. And we did a lot of roundtables with Home Affairs up until August, so pretty much meeting monthly or sooner from the time the strategy got released up until sort of August. And I said, one of the main things I said is we need to have it as a moving feast. Cyber is moving so quickly. You can't just say, here's a strategy for 2030 and we'll just set it there, because quantum and AI and all these things are on the doorstep or in play, and that changes the scope. So we need to be flexible enough with that model. The other part to that is also, if we don't get enough people, and we need to get people from other disciplines. So as you say, there's not really been cyber security professionals. It's a title that has been 7 to 10 years old, but they've come out of IT most normally, or other facets. And I think we need to fill this job gap, make it easier for people to come in from overseas. One part, absolutely, we need to do that, because we've got a shortfall of between 3,000 and 6,000 people in the next few years. The other part to that too is that we need to look for people in disciplines and other areas and say, just say for GRC, governance, risk and compliance, someone who's done accounting or law or something similar to that is ideal to bring across and do that sort of role, So I think we need to, they've already got the business experience, they've got the nous, and then sort of bring them across. If you're getting someone very young, they don't have the business experience, how business works. They might know cybersecurity, but then how does that fit within the context of a business? And what impact do you do by doing something? What's a knock-on effect, from making it too cyber secure that actually limits them actually doing their business well? So there's a balance you need there. And sometimes experience and skill is something you need alongside with the cyber knowledge.
Okay, but it's interesting, Jason. I'm in a Toastmaster club, and last night a new member of the club spoke. She was a young girl, I would have put in her mid-20s, and she said she started as a PA in for the CISO in an organization, and was intrigued and said, "How do I get involved in this?" And she had a great manager who said, "Well, get involved in helping the program people work, and then you'll get the skill sets, and then we'll develop you as an analyst." And she was just over the moon excited about the job she had as an analyst in cybersecurity. She said, "I left school with I'm grade 12. I didn't go to uni," but you could see the enthusiasm, and I'm sure there must be lots of people out there who would really enjoy working in cybersecurity. They would feel they're doing some good,
And there's and I think everyone, like myself and others that I know, we're in it for those reasons. I know that doing the accreditation piece or doing the innovation network or anything that I've sort of worked in, it's a passion project as much as anything else. So a lot of these things we are doing to try and make the place better. It's not too dissimilar in some ways to nursing or other professions you choose where you're trying to help people, So I think that's what we need to make clear. I think cybersecurity is a scary word for a lot of people, and there's so many multiple disciplines across cybersecurity, even from being someone who does training, awareness training or something within an organization. Very key piece there, to make sure that you start those water cooler conversations and get it something that's not so scary, more approachable, and that someone will put their hand up. And to that, I think, Peter's also, if we think about cyber attacks, we've had 3 of the biggest 4 in the last 12 months. It was only a year ago Optus sort of happened, and we've had Latitude and Medibank and stuff. But they're the ones that are most sort of top line, but and they didn't really affect the businesses that greatly if you look at them from a share price point of view and other things. There was bad press and all those sorts of things, and they got jumped on. But if you look at it from the back, a year on from Optus, it hasn't really had a detrimental effect to their business. People still talk about it, but the general public sort of moves on. The news cycle moves quickly. But if these things have been treated like a bushfire or a flood, we go back and say, well, how'd that bushfire start? Or we didn't clear the thing. We had power lines with branches hanging over. We had that sort of thing, or a flood. We need to fix the levees, and we need to do that sort of thing. We need to do that with cyber attacks. They're going to happen, but we need to do an investigation on how they happen and actually share that information. We need like an SES sort of, like we laud the people who run toward bushfires and floods, but not the people who fix up these cyber incidents. And I think we could all learn more from these incidents if we actually share the information and make it not so, negative.
I mean, that's interesting there, Jason, because, one of the shields O'Neill is proposing is a world-class threat sharing and blocking, and part of that threat sharing could be a post-mortem after major incidents. I think maybe holding executives accountable and knowing that if there is a breach of their organization, they'll front up some Senate committee to sort of, if it's a certain magnitude, to explain how it happened, what the deficiencies were, what they're doing to prevent it. I think that would be good culture change,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and that's something I think we need to encourage. I think what happens, Peter, is that people have this negative connotation around cyber. So as I say, where we look at and say, well, bushfires caused this damage or the floods did this, let's look at what we need to do to repair that, make sure it doesn't happen again. I think we also got to have plans for if they do happen, what do you do? It's not, everyone says it's not a matter of if you'll get a cyber attack, but when. But then when it happens, how do we try and confine that? If a bushfire happens, they'll backburn and do different things. I think the incident response, most companies who run through it that I've seen really do a tabletop exercise at best. And you don't really stress test something if you're doing an exercise around a table compared to what we usually suggest is do a full-blown test by saying only the CISO or a few key members of the team know what's going to happen, and actually do a real life attack through there. Because I think the Mike Tyson famous quote of, everyone has a plan till they're punched in the face. That's a real test or stress test of it. I think we need to do that more across the industry and across different industries. And again, use the learnings from there to how we can all get better and make it industry specific. We've got the critical infrastructure stuff in place now. I think it's up to about 167, sort of businesses or main businesses you got in there, sort of sitting in there, but we can make it across industry and across different fields to say, what do we need to look, what does good look like if an incident happens, and where are the most gaping holes that we can fix fairly quickly?
Can I sort of have a thought that, as you were talking there, Jason, because one of the things that in the old days and before cloud computing, most organizations would do some disaster recovery exercise where they would run through, go pull up their backup systems if something was down and stuff like that. Is there, as we move to cloud computing and we don't have on-premise equipment, should we be actually doing disaster recovery exercises around the cybersecurity attack, to make assumptions, and see how we respond and see where the deficiencies are? Because I do get the feeling, the Optus, Latitude, and Medibank all convinced me that the executive for these organizations weren't prepared for what happened. They didn't even have a public communications message addressed. You got the sense they were scrambling as they went,
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's when we're talking testing, it's testing all the way through every part of your organization. What is the messaging going out there? For the upper management of those sorts of businesses, they really should say, rather than saying, they lie a lot to say, oh, it's only a small batch of people, and it ended up being over 10 million. But remember, they were saying a couple 100,000 or something earlier.
Yes, that's right.
You're better off really coming out and saying, at this stage, we're investigating. When we have more knowledge about it, we will let you know. At this stage, there has been some sort of breach that's occurred. We're not exactly sure of the breadth of that. We need to really investigate, and we'll let you know more as we go along, and that's it. I'm not taking any more questions, and off we go. And then release stuff as you do and control that narrative out there. But as you find stuff out, because there's nothing worse than saying, oh, it's a couple 100,000. And then what was it within, 10 days, it was 10 million people.
Well, that's right. The Latitude was the classic. I said 200,000, then it's 14 million, and it's data going back for 14 years. I didn't know if I bought a fridge 14 years ago and used Latitude to do it, And what I also felt with that sort of sense of everyone in the end offers their clients, well, Medibank did to me, an Equifax credit reference, so we'll do a personal monitoring. I mean, I think that should be a statement up front. If you have been affected, you will get a some guarantee of that thing, because I think as consumers, I want to know these people are taking it seriously. And the thing I'm most concerned about is identity management. Somebody using my identity, and I mean, you can steal money from me, and I think that could be recoverable, but over time. But identity, I've heard nightmare stories from people who've been caught up with identity theft.
Yeah, well, you remember, Peter, that having someone's data was key. That was like the best thing. The more you could find out about someone and the more information you could hold. You think about things like, Woolworths and Coles, they like to know their shoppers intimately. What do they buy? What are they into? So you can, they've got obviously a kid because they're buying nappies and all this sort of stuff. How can we push market more stuff around them? But as they create these avatars of people and get more data, it actually makes it more dangerous for the individual. And when you looked at something like Optus, remember when the licenses had to be redone? New South Wales had the digital system, so it was just a change of number. But Victoria and WA and all those ones had, people hanging around the block to try and do it. So I think we need to change how we actually identify people. That's something that's key. We need to remove all that, because there's so much, as I said, that Barry Plant one, if you look on the dark web, there is people's passports and stuff. I remember looking at one which was a couple's passport. They had Chinese passports. They had their full pay. They were buying a house in Glenwaverley. It showed every detail behind there, the commissions, the whole lot, right? So these people have been exposed in this attack quite innocently, but they had to show these details of that level of detail to go purchase a house. How do we protect that better and lock that down so it's, if there is an attack, there isn't that, So yeah, it's something that we've got to reverse engineer, and then also we've got to stop in the future and put a line in the sand saying no more. This is how people get identified, and it's not by showing this much data or sharing this much data.
Yeah, and it's an appreciation of what really is the crown jewels of an organization, and
Yep.
it is your clients and it is the confidence. And if you want a consumer to interact with you online, then you have
Mm.
an obligation to protect that sort of person.
And you think about also, Peter, with that one, I was thinking with Barry Plant, if someone wanted to from another agency, as I said, it's got rent rolls in there, and you have an agency that's in the same area, you can go in there and you can see what they're charging commission wise and all that sort of stuff. Once I know that information, if I'm XYZ real estate in the same
Yes.
area, I could then go and say, oh, do you want us to look after your property? They'll know they're paying, just say 7% as a thing. We do it at 6% and we add this, this, and this. They know the full information, what the people are paying and making, all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. You could easily undercut that business and bring that business to its knees fairly quickly, just getting that data. The availability of that data. I saw some others in manufacturing which showed their patents, they showed how much they make, they showed their cost of manufacture, they showed full financials. It's every single thing about the business. Again, if I'm a business who competes against that business, I can then get that data and go back and start negotiating contracts or making a better widget than what they make, and getting it manufactured at a better price or negotiating. And you can take a whole business out, not just from a financial sense, but just completely out of the market and actually steal all their customers and everything with the amount of information out there. So it is the information of customers, one, but it's also the IP and everything else that goes along with that business that's quite accessible for for anyone to get their hands on it. So it's crazy what's on the dark web at the moment, and it's really worrying.
I mean, it is worrying. It is worrying. I mean, I do want to try and offer the attendees some practical things that they could do, some first steps or something, because they're
Let's
all
start the
cyber
basics. I think,
executives.
let's always start the basics.
what,
I think,
what
yeah.
sort of takeaways would you give people in the audience?
Yeah, I think the key thing is we need to go back to basics. I think people are so fixated and focused down here that they're not even just getting the basics in play. And what we spoke about at the start, Peter, with schools is, have you got multi-factor authentication on everything? Because if you don't have it available on everything, then just put that on. Strong passwords, unique passwords, a password manager is still the best way to do that. And I know people go, oh yeah, but what about LastPass got hacked or whatever the case is? It doesn't matter. Like, if you want to remember all your passwords or have a way of storing it, I don't care if it's Bitwarden or 1Password, whatever. Password manager is the easiest way to do it. You've got a master password then, and then you basically have that stored and encrypted. And with multi-factor authentication, even if they get the password, they still need that second key or biometrics or whatever to get in there, right? So across the board, just have that. If
Yeah.
multi-factor authentication, I remember seeing a study by IBM. It's a few years ago now, but it was 70% of phishing attacks would be incomplete if you just have multi-factor authentication, because even with your password and everything, they still need that second level. Now there is ways around that, and I know people can bring that up, but just do that. Get those basics right, and if you have those foundation, you talked about cloud and storage, but just get your backups done. If there's an update, do the update, right? Your backups, test those as well. So split them, because even if you're backing up to a cloud, if you get an attack happen and someone gets inside your system, they can get into your backups as well. So think about how you do your backups, but have more than one way of backing up, because I have seen people that have a single thing either on a local computer or backed up to a cloud. And once there's that single form and no other backups of the backup, you're in trouble. So you need point
So
in time
it's the
backup.
father grandfather approach to
Yeah.
backup. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always have that's at least second, and I know most people go 3 now. 3 different formats of backup. It doesn't mean you do them. So you'll have one that backs up constantly. You might have a weekly backup and you might have a monthly. But it depends on your business and how much you transact. You sometimes don't have to do it that regularly, but at least have those points in time that you can go back to. Because if you had 15 years in your business and you only lost a month, that's not too bad if you only do monthly backups. But if you're only doing it once a year, it depends on your business, how quickly you transact or how often, so just look at those sorts of things. I think if we do that, then you've got the foundation stuff to build on with other things. Then you can look more broadly at it. But just people aren't doing the basics. So it's hard if you haven't got the basics to build upon anything else.
Yeah, it's almost as you were saying there, sometimes people may need an audit done by an external party to say, these are the basics. I mean, sometimes that may be the way of getting buy-in from the executive of actually building those foundations.
Yeah, what I could share is, and this is something that it's completely free, something we built with CyberAware, is we did something with NIST and the Essential 8. We built like a questionnaire just for small businesses, which they can ask, and then it will just give them a score saying, do you have a password manager? Do you do backups? Do you do, let's just ask sort of 60 odd questions, take them no more than sort of 10 minutes to do. but it then gives them a sort of a snapshot on where they're sort of sitting and where they could sort of fix things. So with cyberware, we usually white label that through MSPs and MSSPs, but we can do a link if you want, or share something like that where you could give to businesses to go and do a test to basically see where they're at. I think doing a simple test, and then if you want something more in depth, when you find you have those gaps, then go and talk to someone else. You know, it's we're completely agnostic in that way. But there's sort of things you could start with. I think we just need to start with the, as I say, the basics, and just find out what you can do. And there are some really quick and simple things they can do. As I said, password managers, multi-factor, backups when available. Even if you start there, then we can start to build up and add more to that mix, you know, for, you know, how you do your backups and securely and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is too, that I think, and this hopefully off the back of the strategy will get better too, is that cyber.gov.au is a great resource which has a sort of paint by numbers way of doing things, but it's just not getting driven there very often. You know, people don't know that it's there as a resource. And I've tested even with my mum when she goes, oh, what do I do with Facebook to set up multi-factor authentication? Send her a link from there. You've got an Android phone or whatever. Here's the step-by-step. It's got pictures and step-by-step guide, and even she could do it, you know, so she's 70 and could use it, you know. So I think there's free resources we could do and use for people that will actually make it a lot easier, that are near and dear to us, but also to the broader community, because it does have small business as well as just individual guidebooks and guide posts on what you can do there. So I think we can improve that as a country, as a resource as well, that people can have access to.